and Isobel is going to try to distill that and share some learning on that particular topic. Thank you very much, Isobel.
Thank you, Matthew. Sue sends her apologies for not being here, but I hope that I'll provide an adequate replacement for her. So the first question is why outcomes? As John indicated, it's something we're being asked for. We're being asked to stand over what we do. So outcomes, they help us in two main ways. The first way is they help us communicate what we do, both to funders, to employers, to young people, all the stakeholders in our services. When we're working in a service, we're embedded in. We can see the change that happens for the young people who are engaged in our programs. So we can see that over time. We know that a young person comes in and they become more confident. We can see that. What we need to be able to do is communicate that. We need to be able to explain that to outside stakeholders and to the general public, so that the perception of youth work isn't just that we're taking young people and doing fun activities with them, or perhaps in some cases that we're rewarding negative behaviour with trips away. We need to be able to communicate what young people are actually achieving through their engagement in our programs. The second point is that outcomes help us to focus on what we're doing. They make sure that we don't lose sight of the purpose of what we're doing. So we focus on what we're achieving with our young people, what we're achieving for our young people, rather than on the activities. The activities are really important. As John mentioned, sometimes we have brought up a dichotomy between the process and the outcomes, that the focus of youth work should be on the process. And absolutely, you cannot achieve any outcomes without having an effective process in place. Youth work is about the relationship. It is about adapting to constantly changing circumstances. But if you really focus on the outcomes, you can make sure that you're still achieving the things that you want for young people while being able to adapt to ever-changing circumstances for them. So our activities should always be guided by the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve with or for our young people, and their needs and assets and interests, and what will work for them. So in Foroige, we use logic models for planning. They're just a tool, they're just a planning tool. Some of you will be familiar with them. A lot of funders now would require proposals, reports, evaluations to be submitted in logic model format. So to give a very brief summary, a logic model tends to have three main elements to it: the inputs, the outputs, and the outcomes. So the inputs are what you put in, they're the resources that you have. The outputs can sometimes get broken down into the numbers, the facts and figures. You have 10 young people a week, once a week for an hour and a half, but also into the activities, what you're actually doing with those young people. But then the most important part, to my mind, is the outcomes. And those are sometimes broken into short, medium, long term. Sometimes you just get one, just overarching outcomes. So how they're presented varies from report to report. But if you're focusing on the outcomes, the rest of the logic model fills in from that. So I tend to fill them in backwards. They're often written horizontally, so inputs, outputs, outcomes. I start with the outcomes. I then look at the inputs. So what resources do I have available to me? What are the strengths and assets and needs of the young people involved? And then the activities flow from that. So to use a very outside of youth work example, if I have a headache, that's my issue, the outcome that I'd like is to not have a headache anymore, be rid of my headache. So there are a number of different activities that I could do, a number of different outputs that can achieve my outcome of not having a headache anymore. So I could take some medication, I could take a Panadol. In order to do that, my inputs, I need either a Panadol and a glass of water, or I need some money to be able to go to a chemist to buy some. But that might not be the activity that I want to do. Maybe I don't have any Panadol, I've no time, I'm knocked out. Or I don't want to take medication, it's not something that I choose to do. So instead, maybe I have a headache because perhaps I'm tired. Maybe I need to have a lie down. So that's the activity I do instead. I go to a dark room, take a break, take a rest for a couple of hours, be nice for a bit. Perhaps some other activity is to go for a walk, get some fresh air. Perhaps my headache's caused by a lack of caffeine, so I'll have a coffee, or too much caffeine, so I'll have a glass of water. So there are all different activities that feed towards the same outcome, in that case of getting rid of my headache. So to apply that to youth work, if we have a group of young people, we might want to, for example, improve their patience, and possibly therefore reduce impulsivity. We might want to improve their ability to follow directions. So we sit down, we think about, we talk to the young people that we have this aim for, and they'd like to do a soccer program. Fine. Okay, so we have an astro pitch nearby that we can use, we've got resources available, those would be from our inputs. So our activity is soccer, but we're working towards the outcomes of improving patience and the ability to follow directions. So while we're doing the soccer game, we're making sure that young people are doing that. Our debrief at the end is, you did really well in listening to the ref at that point. You didn't blow up, well done. You're focusing on that with the young people. Let's say something happens. The young people decide they really, they wanted to do soccer, but actually they're doing it in the evening, it's autumn, it's raining a lot, they're just not interested anymore. Or you run out of money, you can't use it, or the Astro gets damaged and you can't use the pitch anymore. So that throws your plan off course. What are you supposed to do? Well, if your focus is on the outcomes, you know that what you were hoping to achieve for those young people is improved patience and ability to follow directions. There's loads of other activities that we can do with young people that still meet those outcomes. So we could do a cooking program. So if you're doing cooking with a group of young people, they're following a recipe, there are other benefits, they're planning what they're going to eat, there's budgeting, there's improved literacy in terms of reading a recipe, going out shopping, reading the labels, finding what they're going to buy, loads of other outcomes as well. But you're still meeting those original ones that you had for that group of patients and planning and the ability to follow directions. Say you don't have the facilities for cooking, or young people aren't into that, you could do fishing. There are lots of different activities that still meet those same outcomes. So what that means is that if something gets thrown in our way, if an obstacle gets thrown in our way, if something's not working, we just move on. But we're keeping our eye on the end goal and what we want to achieve. So, let's see. Outcomes also help us with evaluation. Now, I'm conscious that that's the topic of the next issue of Scene, and presumably therefore the next symposium, so I won't talk too much about that. John did mention it there. And again, it's something that we all do. I really love John's point around how having a line-up and moving debate is a form of evaluation. Likewise, if you check in with the group at the end of an activity, at the end of a session, that's a focus group. If you have a chat with a young person as you're walking out and ask them how they're getting on, what they thought of today, is there anything they'd like to be focusing on the next time, that's an interview. It's all about how you're framing what we do and present it to other people. The key with evaluation, what makes evaluation much easier, is to know what you're trying to measure. And if we've got clear outcomes in place, we know what we're trying to measure and we can focus our evaluation. Okay.